Good evening and welcome to the Virginia Education Opportunity Alliance Education Success Legislative Zoom call. I am Melody Clark, a Deputy Director with the Virginia Institute for Public Policy and a member of the VEOA Alliance. First, thank you for joining us this evening to learn more about this very important policy issue. We recognize this is a very busy time for you. We would also like to thank our speakers, Robert Enlow, the President and CEO of EdChoice, and Denisha Allen, Senior Fellow at the American Federation for Children and founder of Black Minds Matter. And finally, Craig DeSessa, the Executive Director of the Virginia Education Opportunity Alliance and President of the Middle Resolution Policy Foundation. Please note, while we will be recording the presenters on the call, we will not be recording the Q&A portion of tonight's meeting. That portion is strictly off the record. We want you to feel comfortable asking any questions that you may have. When we do reach the Q&A portion, feel free to message me or Lindsay or use the anonymous question function if you would like to do so. Please do make note of your questions during the presentation and hold those to the end. Our first speaker this evening is Craig DeSessa. His business background includes small business sales and business management. He became acquainted with the founders of Middle Resolution in 2009 and soon thereafter joined their board of directors. He initially directed Middle Resolution's legislative initiatives where he worked to promote public policy focused on the expansion of free market economics in healthcare and education. Craig was instrumental in leading a coalition of healthcare policy experts to provide healthcare alternatives and prevent further expansion of government into the healthcare arena. He was also intimately involved in legislation to offer parents education options through tax credits and other initiatives to provide more choice for all students regardless of income levels. In 2016, Craig became the president of the Middle Resolution, overseeing campaign operations, legislative initiatives, and accountability to the voters. Since its inception, the Middle Resolution has won 10 of 15 nomination contests, 23 of 28 general elections, along with driving legislative efforts in education, healthcare, and election law. Please join me in welcoming Craig to get us started this evening. Craig, you're muted.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Melody, for that introduction. You just reminded me that I need to go in and change some of those numbers. We've been involved, those numbers are back from 5-6 years ago. We've been involved in a lot more races since then. But I want to thank everybody here for joining us tonight. I know it's late, and I know most of you probably been out knocking doors or doing fundraisers, and we really appreciate your effort and your sacrifice for getting involved in the General Assembly. It's so important that we get good people there to help pass good legislation to provide freedom for folks here in Virginia and opportunities. As Melody said, I'm Craig DeSessa, and I'm the president of the Middle Resolution Policy Foundation and executive director of the Virginia Education Opportunity Alliance. We formed that in 2021 after Governor Youngkin was elected, recognizing that we had tremendous opportunity to pass some legislation in the General Assembly that would allow parents to have more options in education. The Virginia Education Opportunity Alliance is made up of 6 partners. It's a coalition. It's not a legal entity. It is a project of the Middle Resolution Policy Foundation, but it is strictly a coalition. And in that coalition is the Virginia Institute for Public Policy, the Family Foundation, Heritage Action, Thomas Jefferson Institute for Public Policy, Americans for Prosperity, and the Middle Resolution Policy Foundation. We meet every Wednesday to discuss strategies and then how we're going to execute on those strategies. And we've been doing this again, so it's almost 2 years now. And we've made tremendous strides in growing a statewide coalition of well over 800 people have joined, including organizations like Moms for Liberty and so forth. And one of our focuses has been getting engaged in the urban communities in Richmond, Petersburg, and Hampton Roads specifically. That has been a real focus because those are the some of the communities that desperately need more options for their children when it comes to their education. Our mission is to strengthen parental rights by expanding education opportunities in Virginia. We aim to create a culture of education freedom here in Virginia. When we achieve that, we will have a robust education system that includes public schools, private schools, and home education. We are not here to tear down the public schools. In fact, just the opposite. We believe there needs to be a collaboration between parents, teachers, administrators, and policymakers to provide the best education for our children so they can be productive citizens in a robust civil society. This should not be an us versus them. This should be all of us working together. The future of Virginia depends on all of us working together to provide an education that best fits the learning needs of every child in Virginia. We know public schools aren't going anywhere. The data is very clear. Parents want both public schools and they want more options. Florida and Arizona both have demonstrated that they can coexist and provide an excellent education for all children. However, in Virginia, unfortunately, it has become clear that our public schools are not providing the basic education our children need. I'm sure you've all heard about Virginia's NAEP scores. We had the country's largest decline in fourth grade reading and math since 2017. That was revealed last year in 2022. And the Youngkin administration is doing everything possible to bring our public schools back to being among the best in the country. Recently, Fund Our Schools Virginia, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're big advocates for more funding for public schools. I don't think they have a limit. But they just reported that the GA added another $650 million to public education. Both Democrats and Republicans came together to pass that funding. Last year, the governor signed a Literacy Act, which had bipartisan support. The governor introduced learning acceleration grants this year to help with learning loss, and the list goes on. So a lot is being done at the administration's level to provide help for the public schools. But we have a challenge here. It takes years to turn around an education system. With 1.2 million children, it's going to take a very long time. So the question becomes, what do we do in the meantime? What do parents who have children in the system now do? Parents need options to provide the best education for their children. Some will continue to stay in the public schools. Most will likely stay in the public schools. The data across the country demonstrates that ESAs and tax credit programs and so forth are popular, but the majority of people still stay in the public schools. And Robert Enlow will be able to share a little bit about that data later on when he speaks. Education choice has been around for decades. However, in the past 10 years, it has really taken off, especially in the last 4. In the meantime, Virginia has fallen behind because we refuse to help parents find the best education for their children. It is time to change that. And that is what we are all about. So now what I'd like to do, Lindsay, can you put up I'd like to share with you the legislation that the VEOA will be getting behind in the General Assembly. Can you put up that? I got just one page here that we're going to get into. Have you got it? Okay. Have you got it, Lindsay?
Yeah, it's just taking a second. There it is.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So I'm going to start in the middle. This is a document we put together to try to simply explain some of this legislation. There's a lot more detail to it, and but I'm going to give a 64,000-foot view right now. Just know that everything hinges, the legislation we introduce or the language we introduce hinges on November 7th. If we get the right folks in office, we'll be able to introduce some very aggressive choice policy. If not, then we will probably tamp back on it a little bit, but we are going to be introducing legislation to help parents. The first one I want to discuss is an existing program called Education Improvement Scholarships. This program exists since 2012, and it is designed to help low-income children. The source of the funds is money that is donated to scholarship granting organizations. Each school today that takes advantage of this program has their own SGO, and they accept donations from folks, it's corporate and individuals. And then parents apply for that funding, that grant that will help them go to that school. Right now, that is available to public school students that are 300% or their families earn less than 300% of the poverty line, which is $30,000 for a family. Well, 100% is $30,000 for a family of 4. So a family of 4 at 300% would be obviously $90,000. and they qualify for these grants. If your child has an IEP, it is 400% or below the poverty line. The amount this is not a correct number. It is not quite that high. One of the things we've been challenged with is when we were trying to pass legislation with a different administration, we weren't getting, they were basically dragging their feet on getting us good numbers on what people would qualify for. So again, this legislation is in draft form, and these numbers may change a little bit, but this gives you a general idea of what it looks like. That number there, the 9235, would be in a district that receives a lot of money from the state. Most of you probably know that each district is different, and all depends basically on the income level in that district. And for example, here in Hanover, where I live, the number's around $5,000 per student that the state provides. But in out west in Wise and Lee County, the number is much higher. In Fairfax and Alexandria, the number is much lower. So it just depends on which district the children are. And this is for accredited private schools. That's it. That's what this program is for. The next policy I'd like to talk about is Education Success Accounts, ESAs. These have become very popular across the country. The first was introduced in Arizona back in 2011. And since COVID, since the pandemic, a lot of states have gone ahead and introduced this legislation. The way it works here in Virginia is that if the child has to be in the public school to qualify, and a parent says, you know what, this isn't working for us, I'm going to remove my child. And the parent would sign a contract stating that they want to receive the ESA money and that they do not hold the public schools accountable for providing an education. They would receive the state portion of the funding that goes per child. In most districts, it's around a third of the total funding. The average down below, you can see it's about $4,500. This is, and as I said, a kid has to be in the public school for a certain amount of time. We're still playing around with that time frame. It's anywhere from 6 months to 12 months. One interesting note, though, is if your child is going into kindergarten or going into first grade for the first time, they would qualify for an ESA. And this is used, you can use it in private schools or you can use it in home education. The bill spells out exactly what expenses you can use this money to pay for expenses. For example, curriculum for a homeschooler, you could use that. Technology up to a point. It explains you can spend this, a percentage up to a point on a computer, for example. Special needs services, you can pay for those. Again, that's also going to be spelled out in the language of the bill. So if you have questions about that, when the bill is released, you'll be able to read all the things that qualify. That's how an ESA works. And we've been introducing the ESA since 2015. We actually got it passed in 2016 and 2017 with limited eligibility. And unfortunately, Governor Northam and Governor McAuliffe both vetoed that legislation. This year, the bill that we'll be introducing will be what I call universal light, meaning that every child in the public school qualifies right now. And that's the legislation we introduced last year, and we'll be likely doing that again this year. The last bill this is new for Virginia. We don't have a parental tax credit program here, but it's very popular across the country. This is, you would get if you were homeschooling your child or sending your child to public school, to private school, you would be able to take a tax credit of the amount of money that you spent for those expenses, for the curriculum or for the private school. Your tax credit is limited to 50% of the SOQ funding or the state funding that follows that child in the public school. So for example, in Hanover, it's $5,000. And I actually homeschooled one of my children, and I actually spent $2,500, this is many years ago, on a curriculum. So I would have been able to write off that $2,500 because it's 50% of the SOQ funding. Now, there's one difference, and that is if a family earns less than 200% of the of the federal poverty line, they would actually get 80% of the SOQ funding in their district. So if it was somebody in Hanover, for example, they would get $4,000 as opposed to $2,500 to write off on their taxes. Now, you're probably thinking, well, a family that is 200% of the federal poverty line is probably not making they're not having that kind of a tax liability, which is true. But they would be able to write off their whatever tax liability they had, depending on what they spent. And the amount there, again, is variable. I want to just reiterate, these numbers are not set in stone yet. We're waiting. We've been talking with the administration. We've been talking with the Department of Education, and they are working on getting us the exact numbers that would be allowed for the child, depending on what program they use here. So those are, and it can be used in a private school and in a home education or homeschool setting. So those are the three types of legislation that we're looking at, where they're in drafting right now. And as I said, they will likely change, but the major proponents, the framework, will not change. Just some of the language might change depending on, of course, what happens on November 7th. So that's it. Melody, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Craig. We really appreciate that. Our next speaker is Denisha Allen, a senior fellow at the American Federation for Children and founder of Black Minds Matter. Denisha previously served as school choice and youth liaison to the Secretary of Education at the U.S. Department of Education. She is a Florida Tax Credit Scholarship graduate and now sits on the board of directors for Step Up for Students. She received her master's degree in social work from the University of South Florida and bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary social science. Along the way, Denisha has become a national symbol for school choice, headlining events with elected leaders, including the former president, governors, members of Congress, and other advocates for school choice. Denisha has shared her story across the country and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, PragerU, the Washington Examiner, Education Week, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and Fox News, among many other outlets. To learn more about Black Minds Matter, visit blackmindsmatter.net. Please join me in welcoming Denisha Allen.
Thank you so much, Melody. That was a great introduction. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. I know it's very late, so your commitment to ensuring every kid in the state has a high quality education should be very commended, and I hope that translates into all of the late night hours it's going to take to fight for these bills, because it's going to definitely take some grit and some hustle. I'll first start off by telling you guys a little bit about myself and just the amazing opportunity that choice availed me. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, benefited, like my bio said, from the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship. Before I got the scholarship, I spent my beginning education journey in my traditional public school, in my neighborhood schools, and I failed the third grade twice because I couldn't read. And it was a time where I hated school. I recall going to school in my pajamas. The only reason why I went to school is so my mother would not go to jail, because that had actually happened before. She had gone to jail because she wasn't sending us to school. I absolutely hated school. And it wasn't until the summer before my sixth grade year, when I began to live permanently with my godmother, that everything seemed to change. One of the first things she did was to enroll me in a small private school that our church started. And my entire life turned around. Before, teachers would sigh, literally, when I came through the door. And then I began to go to this small school where every single day teachers were there to greet me with a smile and a hug. Everything was just so night and day. I went from making D's and F's to A's and B's consistently. And this was no social promotion. It was some hard work. And it took hard work and dedication from myself and my teachers and my peers. The peers at this new school didn't ridicule me or pick at me for being 2 years older than everyone. It was very different. Along the way, I began to just share my story, and I will just pause for a moment and highlight the importance of that storytelling. And so if you know someone who's benefited from school choice, who could benefit from school choice, those stories really help to shape the narrative around the benefits for education freedom. After I graduated from high school, I was the first in my family to graduate from high school. I went on to graduate from undergrad and received my master's degree in social work. I went to work then for the U.S. Department of Education with Secretary DeVos to highlight the stories of many more students and parents and educators who also benefited from school choice, and as well travel the country and share my experience to galvanize support for the Secretary's Rethinking Education initiative. After that, I went on to the American Federation for Children, where I am now, to found Black Minds Matter. And this is a strategic initiative that I started at AFC to promote education freedom in a different way. After the death of George Floyd in 2020, I was really frustrated with the fact that we were canceling things left and right. And I always talk about how Aunt Jemima got canceled. Like, I grew up on Aunt Jemima, so that kind of hurt. But we canceled this pancake and syrup company, but there wasn't this huge galvanizing of everyone, because I can't just say Black people, everyone, to cancel the dismal academic outcomes for Black students. In Virginia, I looked up your scores, 15% of Black kids are reading on grade level, and white students are not doing any better. I think it's like 41% of white students are reading on grade level in the state. And so we need to change something. And that's where I started Black Minds Matter. And I've morphed this into a championing of education entrepreneurs, specifically Black school founders. On our website, we maintain the only online directory of Black founded schools. We have about 450 schools that we found across the state that exist. I'm sure that there's more. I was actually at the press conference with Lieutenant Governor Sears last year for the ESA bill, and there was a Black school that I didn't know about that was there to testify. She had students and everything there. And I was like, what? Let's add that to the directory. So there are a lot of schools that's out. And so we tell their stories to showcase the fact that education freedom exists, and Black education entrepreneurs are changing the narrative for students. The very existence of these Black school founders really gets at some of the myths that happen around school choice. So some of the common myths that we hear is that, oh, school choice is for the creme de creme. These private schools, these charter schools are poaching the best of the kids. And so that's why they're able to have such great success. And we found that that's just not the case. We surveyed the Black school founders, and you can see that survey on our website. Many of these Black school founders were former public school teachers. They're actually voting Democrats, which isn't surprising because the majority of the Black Party votes Democrat. And then they're former public school teachers. They're voters of Democrat. They say that many of their students come from public schools and are performing below grade level when they enter school, and they're lower income. And so these are some things that we already know about the kids and the people who decide to leave the traditional public school space to go to a choice school. And we just have the numbers and the evidence to back it up. So definitely recommend looking at that and even reaching out to a school founder to talk about their experience. They also said that one thing that was interesting in that survey is that they are involved in their school choice coalition groups. So that means that you have this niche of a niche population that's helping to change education in their respective states. This is something that we definitely need to tap into and take before, and especially when it comes time to provide testimony, etc. Yeah, happy to talk about anything else, but I'll kick it back over to you, Melody.
All right. Thank you so much, Denisha. You are fabulous, and we really appreciate your being here. And again, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of folks at the end. But our final speaker this evening is Robert Enlow. He is president and CEO of EdChoice. Before the formation of EdChoice in 2016, Robert was an integral part of the Milton and Rose Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice from its launch in 1996. He served as fundraiser, projects coordinator, vice president, and executive director prior to being named president and CEO of the foundation in 2009. Under his leadership, EdChoice has become one of the nation's most respected and successful advocates for educational choice, working in dozens of states to advance parental freedom in education by disseminating research, undertaking training, sponsoring seminars, conducting advertising campaigns, and investing in and organizing community leaders. Robert has authored numerous articles, book chapters, and op-eds that have appeared in journals, books, and papers across the country. He is also the co-editor of Liberty and Learning, Milton Friedman's Voucher Idea at 50. Please join me in welcoming Robert Enlow.
Thank you very much, Melody and Craig and everyone. Appreciate it. Nice to see you. Again, my name is Robert Enlow, President and CEO of EdChoice. Our mission is very simple at EdChoice. We believe every dollar should follow every child to every learning opportunity that works best for them, whether that's public, private, online, at home, or in any other way we haven't thought of. My job tonight was to share with you what we know about the effectiveness of school choice or educational choice in America. So just by way of looking at it, 2023 is the year of universal choice. There were 111 bills authored in 40 states this year. 79% of those bills were ESA bills. 40% of those bills were universal. Every child would be able to choose. So there has been a massive movement towards expanding choice to everyone and a massive movement of success. There are now 10 states in America that allow every single child to choose. And you're all, in many ways, you're sort of near some of them. So Florida, Arkansas, Ohio, Indiana, Utah, Arizona, now North Carolina, so your neighbor will allow it as well. So there's significant growth in the idea of educational choice. When you guys are out and about, though, you're going to get hit with a whole bunch of questions about the idea and whether it's true or false. What I want to share with you real quick is what we know about the impact of school choice and educational choice on families' lives. So you're going to get asked this: how are kids doing? Are they actually doing well on test scores? And the answer to that is there have been 17 random assignment studies, 17 high-quality random assignment studies. And when I say random assignment, here's what I mean. They get rid of all the attributes except the pill or the placebo. It's the exact same thing used in the medical research. There have been 17 studies done of how kids do on test scores when they get a voucher or a scholarship. 11 of those have found positive effects for some or all children. 4 have found no effects. So basically, 83% have found either positive or no effect, and 3 studies have found some negative effects in the first 2 years. So here's what we know. Kids who get a voucher do slightly better over time on test scores. Okay, that's good. But what else do we know about them, right? We know that children who actually receive scholarships not just perform a little bit better on test scores, they attain more in their life, right? So the studies, there have been 7 studies looking at how do kids do in college, right? What do they do? So children on scholarship programs matriculate into college at higher rates and retain in college at higher rates. So what we know about the effects on kids are that they perform slightly better on test scores, particularly in the 3rd and 4th year, and they graduate at higher rates, they go to college at higher rates, and they stay in college at higher rates. Positive information. Take a quick step back. There have been 187 studies into the impact of school choice on a family's life, right? 187 high-quality studies that we track. Do you know how many studies have been done on class size, which we take as a God-given proof that schools could be good if they had lower class size? There have been 2, right? So there are 187 on school choice. 33 studies have found have been studying how do parents do. What's the parent satisfaction? 91% of those find high parent satisfaction. And in fact, not just high parent satisfaction, parents behave differently when they get choice. When a family gets access to more choices, they start showing up at their school more. They start interacting with their child's teacher more. They start voting more. So there's a huge amount of positive results for families. We also hear a lot, and you're going to hear this a lot, that, oh my gosh, public schools are going to get harmed by this. So they're going to be harmed either by kids leaving and you're going to leave the bad kids behind, or going to be harmed by the money that's sort of taken out of the system. Let me answer the first one real quick. In 29 studies that have looked at how do public schools do in states that have school choice, 29 of them, 26 found that public schools in areas of choice do better on test scores than in areas that don't have choice. So just think about that for a second. 90% of the studies have found that public school districts, when there's lots of choice in them, do better and do better faster. So public schools get better with choice. As for the money thing, let me just ask you this question. If it is true that public schools lose money when a child gets to choose a non-public option or a charter option, then wouldn't the same hold true if they move from one public school district to another public school district? The largest people who take money away from a public school are people who move. Now, we could argue whether we agree or disagree with that, but the reality is because the way we've set up education in America, money follows a child from one school to another school. What school choice is doing and educational choice is doing is simply that money goes to the family. It doesn't go to the system. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt of the 70 studies that have been looking at fiscal impacts of school choice on public school coffers, 68% of them have found that there has been a positive effect from school choice to public school coffers. 5 of them have found no effect, and 5 of them have found a slight negative effect. So what we're saying here is 93% of the studies have found that public schools in states with school choice have more money. This makes sense. A child in my home state of Indiana, who's a 3rd grader in the city of Indianapolis, gets $18,000 to go to a traditional public school. And they get federal, state, and local money. That same child will get $9,000 to go to a charter school. And that same child will get $6,000 scholarship to go to a non-public school. I'd like to know how that child got 12,000, reduced their value by 12,000, right? So the fact is because choice programs only take a portion of the state funds, typically, no local funds and no federal funds, it's almost impossible for a choice program to harm traditional public schools in any way. So what I'm saying to you is out of 187 studies that you find, rest assured 162 of them, or 84%, find a positive effect. 10% find no effect. So that's 94% of all the studies done into school choice show a positive or no effect. So you can rest assured when you're walking around talking about this issue that you can say parents are happier, students are doing better, they're attaining more, they're going to college more, families are more involved, children are more tolerant, public schools get better, and they don't lose money. That is what we know. So happy to take questions, but I wanted to arm you all with facts about how school choice works in real life.